That has now started. Brendan, recording has started.
Thank you, Dennis. Welcome to all of you joining us live and also afterwards to our 13th meeting of the Working Age Forum. And we have our guest interview segment now, where we're delighted to welcome Lynn Cox, all the way from England. Lynn is an artist, a coach, and a trainer, and has a lot of experience in these fields, and has offered us some time to join us today across the water to talk to us about her experience. Lynn, thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope you're going to enjoy it, everyone.
Can I ask, Lynn, as a first question, what is your current job and how did you get there?
Okay, I'm currently self-employed. I'm, as you mentioned, an artist, a coach and a trainer. Quite a circuitous way to get to this portfolio career of doing a bit of everything. My first degree was in mathematics and computing, and I worked for a year for Hewlett Packard in Berkshire. And I found it really tough. The expectations of how quick you had to work, how quick you had to learn the code, was really tough for the first 6 months. And I thought, I'm never, ever going to work for anybody again. You know, the second 6 months, I was quicker than anybody else because I'd memorized it. But I thought, I'm never going through the stress of that first 6 months. So I kind of said then I wouldn't work for anybody else. I then retrained as an artist, and I did a BA and an MA at Wimbledon School of Art, and I'm still based in that area of London now. And I realised making an artist was, you know, being an artist was the opposite thing. You know, Hewlett Packard, I could earn lots of money once I've got through the stress level. As an artist, I can make hardly any money. So I had to do something in between. So I decided, around just over 20 years ago now, to do some training with an arts organisation in London to be an equalities trainer and a visual awareness trainer. So I did that alongside exhibitions and art workshops. That then led into doing some mentoring for the organisation, doing some mentoring qualifications, and afterwards that led to qualifications in coaching and coach supervisor. So in a way, the training I do, all the equalities training I do, and the coaching, and also a lot of access work. So I go into organisations, look at websites. I do market research for organisations. So we do mystery shopping or looking at products. So we were looking at a famous soft drinks brand, and I got taken to Brussels the other week to do some market research in Brussels for them. Usually it's not quite as glamorous as Brussels, but so a lot of the access work is coming in as well. And I suppose something that came up in our chat is in the past I would have to generate all this work myself.
Right.
So I spent as much time, trying to market myself very badly and get work and do this and that. So what I've done more recently is I've looked at organisations I can partner with. So there's an organisation I've been doing about 1 day a month for now 7-8 years. I've got another organisation that's averaging out about 2 days a month, another organisation that's averaging out 3 or 4 days a month. With that, that's enough income to allow me to do the artwork, which is, I suppose, where my passion lies. And the artwork is all about inclusion, access, and equity. Everything is about that. Everything is about that.
Right. Very interesting, Lynn, the journey and how you described it. You know, it's almost like as you go along that path and you learn what it's actually like in these different careers, these different sectors, you're starting to learn things about how it really works and what you really need in terms of predictable income and how to kind of take advantage of the flexibility, but also reduce some of that risk that comes with it.
Yeah, it's probably taken 20 years to come to that solution, but yeah, definitely so. And it is having that flexibility. I love that. So I wouldn't want to work. You know, there's a job I can go for now 3 days a week, and it's a lovely job. I'm thinking 3 days a week, week after week after week, and I just don't think I could stick it. I enjoy the variety far too much. I think, even though that would be a lot more secure. So it is finding that balance.
Right. And how has your own journey of sight loss influenced these choices in your career?
Well, I grew up in, you can probably tell by the accent, Dudley in the West Midlands, even though I haven't lived there for nearly 40 years. I've still got the accent. Quite a poor working class area. And in that area, the expectations of anybody wasn't great. You know, I was growing up in the late 70s, early 80s. The UK economy was not great. All the heavy industry around the Midlands was closing. And actually, for me, getting recognised that I'd got a sight issue and that I could go to the Royal National College for the Blind in the UK was one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because it got me out of Dudley. It got me an education. I came into school with a couple of, back then, CSEs. That shows how long ago it was, and 1 O level. I went to the Royal National College for the Blind, and all of a sudden I could do O levels, I could do A levels, I could apply for university. You know, from that I could then apply to art college. You know, I've got a guide dog. I've had 4 of them now, but I got the first one when I was 20, while I was still at the college. So for me, it's never been a negative. I mean, when I first lost reading vision when I was 18, that was absolutely devastating in itself. And that took a while to get used to. And I think that was the hardest point for me, losing the independence of being able to read. But actually, if that happened now, there's so much tech there. I don't think it would have hit me quite as hard, but you can't tell. But I've been lucky, you know, as the site's gone, I hear where I am. I hear the space around me. I hear the room I'm in. I can hear the walls. I can hear the echo coming back, and I can utilise that in my artwork. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I embrace every little bit of that uniqueness. You know, the wonder of talking computers, Braille. You know, a lot of that you can play about with to create art.
What's the most radical artwork you've done?
After COVID, or during it, I made a 6-foot wide skirt made out of copper wire and white canes, which I wore and moved around in to indicate just how impossible it was for somebody that couldn't see to say 6 foot away from people. So it's like 6 foot away from from me. Like, you couldn't go for gaps, you couldn't walk on the pavement, you couldn't do this. Do you know what I mean? So it was really making it, you know, this
making
is
a point.
Making the point that actually, you know, you've not thought about these rules. You've not thought about going around the supermarket in one way. How am I meant to see these arrows on the floor? So I did a wee bit around that. Some of my work is political, but some of it is purely decorative. So I had an exhibition recently. I was at Sotheby's in London, and I did a Medusa. Now, again, that's a political piece, but it's not about disability. It's about how women are seen in society. And you know, we've got 2 views of Medusa: the temptress with the snakes that turns people to stone, or you've got the Gorgonea type of Medusa that was the evil monster. You know, nobody ever mentions that, you know, she was raped by one god, turned into a monster by another god, and had her head chopped off to be used as a weapon by Perseus. Do you know what I mean? So actually, she's had it hard, and I think it's just reassessing how we put people into their roles and their places. And again, it wasn't strictly about disability, but that can be said for disability as well. You know, people put us in these little notches that we're made to conform to. Why?
Right. The parallels between, I mean, any experience of marginalization is bound to have parallels with others, in the sense that if you're in a inhospitable environment, as I often call it, you know, what is it like to be somewhere that you can't easily move around physically, independently, or that there's judgments around whether you should or shouldn't be there. And in an employment setting, that's so true. You know, how is the office environment made accessible for those of us with sight loss? How do our colleagues interact with us? How can we be an equal member of the team? All of these things come up as we challenge the systems that we live and work within. As someone who's working for themselves and has gone through a journey of sight loss, what is it actually like to work for yourself when you're blind or vision impaired, from your perspective?
Okay. I suppose because I lost most of my reading vision at 17, as I mentioned, colour vision at 22. I didn't go self-employed until in my 30s. So the sight loss there was absolutely, you know, couldn't really see anything up much use. Shadows. And I think I've actively not used the remaining sight. However, I know at the minute I don't see anything at all, and I know that's slightly trickier than when it was going and I could sense things, but I wasn't realizing I was sensing things, if you know what I mean. So I think for me it's doing things like work-wise, making sure I'm going out, making sure I'm doing as much as I can independently, but equally if something's too tricky, getting that taxi, getting that asking for that help. Because a lot of my freelance work is all over the place, all over the country, occasionally abroad. I have to keep my confidence up, and for me, part of that is having a guide dog who will be retiring next year. So a battle for me in the future is getting that confidence using a cane. And I can use a cane, and I'm okay with a cane, but it's not the same level of confidence. I think it's layering up. For me, it's using the disability as a positive and layering up experiences. So in 2008, we had the recession. And that was dreadful. So my income went from income coming in, earnings coming in, from nearly 20 grand to virtually zero in 1 year. Because all the organisations I was doing freelance work with just brought everything in-house. They didn't want to pay for anything external. So actually what do you do at that point? You've got to use that adaptability. So, you know, I make tactile scented Christmas cards, birthday cards. I did business cards. I did braille labels to go on business cards. I did anything, even if it was bringing in a £5 here, £10 there, 50 quid there, just to keep the business ticking over until the economy picked up. So I think it's part of, you've got to be really adaptable and think about what you can do yourself, but also think about where you do need that help and what that help is, and utilise it when it's there. Did I answer the question properly, Brendan?
Absolutely. You shone a light on one of the questions that had come in from our group here. What are the pros and cons? And earlier you'd mentioned about the pros of flexibility and having, you know, variety and all these different things, and not having a boss other than yourself. And just now you were sharing about some of the cons, like the unpredictability of work, the risk of burnout. We heard earlier from our breakout groups, you know, that we can end up saying yes to everything, and then you go from famine to feast and back again, you know. So no, it's really helpful, and it's something that's a topic for all of us, it comes up quite a bit for artists, for people who want to set up their own business or perhaps are running their own business. It's so just hearing what is it really like is so helpful. So thank you for that. I'd like to wrap up this portion of the interview with 2 questions that really draw on your experience as a coach. You've worked with a lot of different people over the years in different sectors. And then after that, we'll pause the recording so we can turn to the community here for Q&A live. So the first question is actually prompted by one other person that wrote in to say, you know, I struggle with procrastination. I sometimes don't feel all that confident in myself. And this is one of the topics that can come up a lot, you know, in coaching conversations, you know. As a coach, what would you say to someone who struggles with procrastination and feels at times not that confident in themselves?
I think there's a few things you can do. Firstly, identify if there's a set time of the day that you feel more energized to do something. So for me, it's morning. If there's anything tricky, anything worrying, anything that's slightly complex, I want to get that done first thing in the day, not leave it till later in the day when my energy levels might be dipping. There's things about looking after yourself, making sure you're exercising, eating properly. So that often levels out procrastination, because some of that procrastination may be energy levels as well. But also splitting down something, you know, if something feels too tough, split it into its components. You know, oh, I can do this email today, or I can chat with this person. You know, splitting up a problem into smaller problems or smaller issues can really work. The other thing is, don't overwhelm yourself by doing a huge to-do list, because you'll never get to the to-do list. You'll just put more things off as things are ticked off. So
you found me out, Lynn.
A great way of doing it, and you do it the evening before. I picked up this on a time management book I read, probably about 15 years ago. Lovely book, got tons and tons of ideas, most of which, you know, you can't take them all on. But the one I took is write down 3 things you want to do the next day, the evening before. So whenever you finish work, maybe, or before you go to bed, you know, either audio record them, jot them down in Braille, whatever. Write them in some format. So you've done a physical task, but only 3 things. And that could be as simple as take the dog for a walk. You know, email so-and-so, you know, meet with a friend. You know, doesn't have to just be work. It can be a mixture, but just put 3 things on that you're definitely going to do the next day. You'll get to the end of the next day. Hopefully you will have ticked off those 3 things. Then you can concentrate on 3 things a day after, 3 things a day after. And by doing that, you're tipping away at everything all the time without it feeling overwhelming, and that reduces procrastination.
Very good. And it reminds you of that saying, you know, it's about stitching one thing to another, stitching 1 hour to another hour, stitching one day to another day. So reduce the scope or the sort of field of vision, figuratively speaking, down to just 2 or 3 things, and take those. And then after those, you might pick 2 or 3 more.
Yeah, and you might have done a few extra things in that day that weren't on the list, but you wanted to do anyway. So actually, then you've got a positive tick for that day. Because actually, it's probably worth looking at as well what you did in that day. You know, because there'll be things there, even if it's like going to the bank and sorting out my finances or whatever, there'll be little things on there that you've had to do in that day because they've come up that are also positive. So actually, that free list of the day before probably is ticked off with maybe 5 things, maybe only 2 some days, you know, because you're not always, you know, so don't be too harsh on yourself. You can't always be, you know, super person. Some days we're going to get less done. If I have a migraine, I get nothing done that day. I've got to accept that. That's how it is.
Right. Well, thank you, Lynn, very much. We're going to draw the interview portion to a close, and then we'll open up for the rest of the group task questions. But for the time being, thank you very much for
thank you, Brendan,
your sharing and your insights. And Dennis, we can end the recording.
Okay, I shall do that.